Hello, hello. We're back with another episode of Scaling Robotics. Scaling Robotics is a series of conversations with leaders at robotics companies who have actually scaled their fleets. We hope to democratize some of the hard-earned lessons that these folks have gained to benefit the next generation of robotics companies. Today we have an awesome guest. We have Ritukar here. Ritukar, thanks for coming along. Do you mind introducing yourself and autonomy?
Yeah, sure. First of all, thanks for having me here, and it's a pleasure. I'm Ritukar. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Autonomy, and have been in the industry since last, 16 odd years before starting Autonomy, and have spent all my life, building autonomous systems, autonomous robots for defense, for warehouses, and then autonomous cars before I got myself into autonomy. Now, it's interesting that we have a lot of things going on, on-road autonomy, which is autonomous cars. And we have a lot of scaling up, which has already happened in warehousing robotics. So there was a sweet spot which was underserved when we talk about indoor-outdoor logistics. And I think that's, where we started autonomy and catering to, that white space. Yeah.
Awesome. So, just for some more context, autonomy, you guys have these smaller mobile robots that kind of do deliveries, like you said, intralogistics for your customers at their facilities, and they go both indoor and outdoor in these deliveries.
Yeah, that's right. So I think we kind of bring things from both sides. Where the reason for picking indoor outdoor logistics was to make seamless adoption of robots in public spaces. Now, if you look at adoption in places like warehouses or manufacturing facilities, the environment is so conducive that robots can be easily adopted there, and that's what we have been seeing since last 10 years. Like hundreds and thousands of robots have been deployed already. But at the same side, if we look at robots in public domain, or where more people are there, where co-working with the staff is happening, that's where the adoption is still happening. It has not. Nobody has cracked the code, to have massive adoption for robots. Now that was till date, but now if we look at it, different modality of robots are coming around, and that's where we see that how these robots can be more part of day-to-day lives, whether it is industries or hospitals, and you name it. So that's what we've been trying to do.
Awesome. And then I guess last question about autonomy in general. So you talked about healthcare hospitals. Can you give an example of what deliveries a hospital would need? I'm sure there's so many things that go with the operations of a hospital that I have no idea, or the audience doesn't either. But yeah, I would love to hear more about what kinds of things that they're sending around.
No, that's a great question, because as a roboticist, even we never knew that hospital will require these many robots. But what is happening is it's a very crazy place where there's a lot of logistics already happening, but we don't see it. And the reason why robots are very very important for healthcare is because there's a huge amount of compounding problem which is on top of labor shortage, right? So whether we are talking about shortage of nurses in the US specifically, there'll be almost 500,000 less clinicians or nurses available for healthcare operations. But what was most interesting to see, specifically in healthcare, was that even the existing staff is kind of underutilized, from a fact that they almost use their 48% of their time in logistics, which is not their core uh, you know job profile. So we are putting up these robots to make sure that nurses can spend more time on patient care while robots do the logistics. And it was very interesting to for us to realize that a nurse walks about 15 to 20,000 steps a day, and that's a lot actually. So I think we are taking that load, cognitive load and physical load, from the staff, to make sure that robots can do dull and dirty. And since you asked about the use cases at hospitals, there are many, right? So right from blood sample movement to telemetry equipment movement, and also we are talking about vaccines, pharmacy, There's so many things which are moving here and there. It's just that we don't realize it because nurses are, or the clinicians are, making that logistics work, which is a very, very tough thing to do alongside the core responsibility, which is around patient care.
That's 20,000 steps. I like can't even remember the last time that I hit that. And they're doing that every day. Yeah, wow. Real heroes. I can see how robotics is very useful there. Um, Something interesting that you said earlier in our conversation is that, you've been building in autonomy for more than 16 years across different domains. So you've seen a lot of the industry's transitions. I'm curious, there's a lot of hype in robotics now, but what actually feels different about building robots or robotics adoption that's different today than, the last decade?
The most important thing which currently is important or critical is the solutioning part. So what is happening now, that the users are much more aware of the problems which the robots can solve, compared to a decade earlier, where robotics companies were talking to people or enterprise customer, educating that robots are going to make their lives better or their business better, right? So I think that's a sea change in terms of perspective, where there's a lot of hype built around humanoids, where everybody thinks that hey, we can have a couple of humanoids and our work will be all okay. So that is the expectation at the customer end, but the reality is that the robotics industry is trying to keep up with the hype, right? So I think whatever is announced today, it is going to take 5 to 10 years to be commercialized. And a very good example from that perspective is when autonomous cars came in back in like 2009 2010, and just after the DARPA Grand Challenge, and specifically when Google announced it in 2011 2012, around that time frame, that next 2 years all cars will be autonomous. But here we are, I mean, after 15 odd years, there are certain pockets which are running autonomous cars, and still there's no clear business plan around it, right? So I think that's how the industry works. Because of AI, yes, that 15 years journey can be cut short into 7 to 8 years from now, maybe 5 years. So I think that's the change. So customer expectation is very high from robotic systems, that it is going to change everything overnight. And robotic systems, the people who are providing the solutions are coping up with that expectation reset, that hey, these are the main problems, you need to solve this. You don't need to have a very, very fancy humanoid to solve everything for you.
Um, on the point of customers being aware that robots can solve their problems now, because of the years of education that have happened, what does it look like to educate customers now or in general? Do you have any advice for folks who are going through this buyer process and are trying to bring their customers along the journey of automating some process?
I think it's very clear to us, like, love the problem, not the solution, right? So I think the more deeper you understand what the problem is, the more closer you will be having an efficient solution to solve it for the business, for people, and everybody, right? So I think that is one of the core thought process which we try to communicate with all our users or customers. And more importantly, they one should not have a solution just for the sake of having robots, because it's cool to have robots, but whether not just we are not only talking about the ROI or functionality. I think these are the most important things which, when it comes to having robots into the workforce, because at the end of the day, it is a staffing problem which we are fulfilling with robots. So you just don't hire people like that. You have a dedicated ROI. You plan those resources and then you induct them, and that's exactly how the robot fleets are going to be, or they are already getting deployed in main workforce.
So sounds like focusing on what actual problem am I solving for the customer, and not necessarily the robot that I'm building. And the second part was understanding that this is a ROI equation for the customer, just like it would be if they were hiring someone to do a job. On that point, it feels like when I talk to robotics companies, ROI feels like a big blocker for getting customer adoption. Are there any other big things that are blockers when you're usually trying to deploy a robot with the customer, or working with the different facilities, IT, procurement, whatever it might be? Anything else you can share on that side?
I think it's most of the deployment of robots which have been specifically when we talk about public deployments, whether it is last mile or it is within a campus or anywhere where normal staff who doesn't know anything about the robots are also working. I think those are the environments where the deployments have been done in silos with the entire ecosystem. So one of the biggest challenges or one of the biggest opportunity, I'll say, is to orchestrate that whole infrastructure or ecosystem. So it's not just robots which are running autonomously. I think that's an easy part. But robots, navigating, understanding the context where they are running is very, very important. Robots which are communicating with the infrastructure seamlessly is very important. And on top of it, robots not limited to majority of transitions. Like for example, we have seen a lot of manufacturing or warehousing robots, mobile robots, which run very well on epoxy floors. But when it comes to bringing those robots outdoors or even a small bump, I mean their ODD is so limited that they can be deployed in that favorable environment. So the more diversified ODD for the robot in terms of capability will be, the higher adoption will be there, because not all robots will be deployed in complete greenfield operations, but we are talking about deploying robots where people are working. So it has to be brownfield operations, and that's where kind of our approach of indoor outdoor kind of extends that thought that the ODD in which the robots are running, it should not be limited to only indoors or only outdoors. Rather, it should be a seamless experience for the end customer.
Yeah, the part about having to make these robots interoperable with all this existing infrastructure like elevators and doors seems difficult to say the least. Uh, how are you and your team thinking about approaching this, I guess scalably, as you go across, different customers, being able to flexibly adapt to whatever infrastructure that exists with a given customer at a new deployment?
I think what we've done is we have kind of templatized the entire solutioning bit of it, where elevator integration is no more a big challenge, not for the customer and not for us. Same goes with access doors and smart lockers, so that asynchronous deliveries without any human intervention can happen, and even drones. So what we have done is we have we have this orchestration layer which is called autumn.ai, which is integrating every infrastructure element which is coming as part of integrations with variety of customers, right? So for example, we are running these robots in one of the large pharma company in Boston, and also a rocket company in Florida. So, I mean, the robots are integrated seamlessly with the infrastructure wherever required. I mean, if it is not required, it's okay. But the capability of having those integrations is incremental to the solution. Nobody's going to spend like months to do those integrations with the customer. I think that's what the most important thing which is coming out. The second is like again, when we talk about readiness of the infrastructure for enterprise customers, whether the doors are automated or doors are manual, obviously our robots are not going to open the doors right now. But most of the enterprise customers, they have, there is room for that upgrade for automated doors and elevators which can communicate on software. And even if that doesn't happen, we have third party solutions which are coming in. So really, it's like it's not about the robots, as I said earlier. It's about the solution which is going to the customer. I think that matters the most.
In the early days of autonomy, did you ever feel, was there a moment where you realized that you and the team were focusing too much on the robots and not enough on the solutioning? It sounds like now you're very solution oriented. I'm curious if there was a point or specific moment that made you realize, hey, we need to flip the way that we think about this.
I think it's a journey, like specifically when it is a product based company. you first of all focus about the product, right? So there was a time, and still we are heavily invested in the product, what we are delivering to the customer. Now, when we were, back in 23, 24, when we were doing early pilots with the enterprise customers, that was the time when we were focused on the robots. uh, when we started working with enterprise customers to convert those pilots into long-term contracts, that was the time when we started working on integrations. And now at this point in time, when we have done multiple such integrations, we have deployed many robots in different environments. We understand what are the technology challenges which need to be solved. So contextual AI is one of them, which we focused on like last year onwards, where we understand the context where the robots are running and automatically assign associated behaviors on a continuous thread. So that is very, very important. So that becomes the part of the problem. Software became the most important thing at that point in time, that how the robots are able to navigate in different environments while the engineers are not spending time on site, right? So it's so at the end of the day, it's phase, like first build the product, then you deploy, then you reduce the time to deploy, then you want to make sure that robots are seamless, and there's an expansion strategy, even if that goes beyond the ODD which the customer actually wanted. So now we are at a stage that we are talking about solution, because we are pretty much, you know we are very much ready on the robot side. We are very much ready on the robotics software side for contextual AI, and the orchestration is something which has incrementally built over the period of time. And now it's all about what the customer wants, and put the solution in, so that we can have a higher adoption rate with the customers.
So if I'm playing this back to you, it sounds like when you think about the milestones from going from R&D or piloting to production, it's make the robot work, deploy the robot, iterate, reduce the time it takes to deploy, and then from there it's about removing engineers from being on site to manage it remotely, expanding the ODD, um, and that's kind of where you're into the production phase of your company.
Exactly. And sometimes you can't even do remote stuff when you're talking about enterprise customers, because these are secured facilities. There's so many regulations. So like when we talk about companies which are doing food deliveries for hyperlocal environments, you can pretty much teleoperate the robots, and that was the approach which most of the delivery robotics actually took, that they are primarily teleoperated, and slowly and gradually they will become automated in some parts, phases, and whatnot. For us, it becomes a flip side, and right from the beginning we were focusing on autonomous aspect of it. That's why the name of the company is Autonomy. And then for enterprise customers, full autonomy is very, very important, because they want minimum, or I'll say no intervention from outside. you know so I think it is a very important aspect that you build the technology stack, keeping your end customer in mind, because that becomes very, very important. Because for hyperlocal deliveries, whether the robots are fully autonomous or not, it doesn't matter to the customer. But for enterprise settings, it really is a big issue if the robots need some manual intervention from outside. So I think keeping the customer requirements or the type in mind is very, very important while you are shaping up the tech stack for your products.
From our discussions previously, uh, sounds like your main focus now is how can we get this to scale right across the company, across all our customers across the world, um, and really focusing on the operational excellence there. Uh, for you broadly, what does operations robot ops mean, and what are the big things that you're focused on when scaling this up?
I think it is a multi-phased approach there. Like the first part of operations is part of solutioning. So I'll break it down into two parts rather. One is the operations of the customer, like what are the logistics operations we are automating. And then the second part is, once we are automating, then what the original ops was for the company, our customers, is now robot ops, right? So if we think it from that lens, everything changes. Because if we look at, hey, we have to run robots and that is my ops, no, actually that's something which works for pilots. But the most important thing is that, you know, you need to work. You have to replace the regular operations as robot operations. So and it changes the whole psychology, the team construct of running the operations by the robots, right? So a simple example is for an ops team, robot ops team, whether the robots are running or not running, that is that's a easier part to be solved, because that is more of a technical ops side. But how the customer or the end user is interacting with the robot, or what behaviors of the robot are not acceptable by the customer. I'll give you a very simple example, and that's where the technology also plays a vital role for the operations, is the contextual awareness part, right? So for example, if the robots are in a hospital pathway, and the robots see a wheelchair with a person in it, the robot will not try to avoid it. It'll give the right of the way. At the same time, if there are people, or there are static or dynamic objects, the robot will try to, it will successfully, avoid and, take the shortest path possible, keeping in mind what are my operational limitations. Now, operational limitations can be many. So, for example, few enterprise customers have their own set of rules that, hey, a robot should be on the, closer to the wall. They should be away from the wall. So, I think when we have a construct of robot operations, the customer type is very, very important, because knowing your end user is the most important part of running ops. Now, this is like when you are actually replacing the regular ops with the robot ops. Now, technically, I think it's a very important aspect of having a very transparent platform, so that the customer teams and our teams are very, very aware that what are the where what are the areas where the robots are running flawlessly, and what are the areas where, based on the type of application, it needs more work to be done, right? So I think that transparency, normally it's very difficult to get initially if there are no set channels established. So communication, transparency with a single software or a well defined way is important aspect of the operations, how we see it. And I think 80% of the problem when it comes to robot operations is the expectation mismatch, or the lack of communication there, or transparency. Yeah.
I love that, and I think that's a great way to say it, which is actually your robot ops is your customer's operations, and the metrics that we're managing to are the metrics our customer cares about, not necessarily the metrics of how the robot itself is performing. They're obviously very correlated, but they're different. Um, I love that. I guess given that, are the things that you're tracking, uh, are they the usual robot stuff like MTTR or like interventions, or is it more, I guess, directed to the customer's deliveries, success rates, things like this? How do you think about those metrics?
I think it is multi-tiered. So you know, for example, our orchestration layer has aspects which are related to the technology performance. I think that is one part of it, where we continuously monitor the performance of the robots, so that we can take some preventive actions if there are some errors which we know are going to happen because of the historic data which we're getting. The second part is that when we are running these robots, what are the operational efficiencies? So operational efficiencies like number of trips, for example, what percentage of users were having they had a seamless operation, like within less than 10 seconds of spent to take out packages from the robot. So that is a seamless operation. If they took like 45 seconds to get the package out, I think they are trying to figure out what's happening. So that is also a metric for us. Also, interventions is, it's a logical data to evaluate that performance, that whether the while the deliveries are getting done, but were there any interventions, were there any unscheduled interventions, because sometimes we need to have those interventions as part of the system design. For example, if you're crossing roads, if you're, and if the regulation says that you have to teleoperate or monitor, in those cases, you have to do it. But, there are customers where it is not allowed at all. So there's no role for intervention whatsoever. So I think a mix of technical parameters which help you to identify the overall, uptime and performance of the robotic system. And then we have the other part, which is the operational efficiencies, which is the regular data or reporting data, which matters to the customer at the end of the day, whether it is a person or a robotic staff which is doing it.
So you briefly mentioned this, but talking about interventions when things go wrong or the robot needs extra hand holding, uh, what does the life cycle look like for an incident? So we detect some error or something gets flagged. What does it look like to go from that moment to a resolution and then future prevention of those kinds of errors for the fleet?
I think it's again, the way we see it is operations first, like the customer operations first. So, for example, if there is a fleet of robots which is deployed, and if there is an error which or intervent, a robot is asking for an intervention. So the first and the foremost solution will be focused around how the operations can be unaffected. So if the robot is not already loaded with any package, then we'll dispatch another robot first. So that's our first action towards mitigating a situation, which is basically a technical issue or an operational issue or maybe sometimes a network issue, right? But at the same time, we have the technical resolutions, like so first of all, the urgency should be gone by taking a fleet based decision, so that the operations are not affected, because that's the goal. It's the goal is not to run the robots. The goal is to make sure that the robots are doing the job which they were they have been assigned for. Now, then comes the resolution of any issues which are there with the hardware, software, and then we identify the telemetry data based on how and what needs to be done there.
So as we keep scaling operations at Autonomy, my guess is that you want as few humans to manage as many robots as possible. Uh, just curious if you have any ratio of that number that you're aiming towards. But in general, as you push that number higher, what are the things that you have to get right or things that you've seen break in this journey?
I think when it comes to the ratio, again, I mean, it's we have not tied down the ratio per robot, number of robots. Rather, if there's a fleet of 5 or 15 or 30 robots at a particular customer site, it'll be one or two people who will be managing an entire fleet. I think that is the whole purpose. So we need humans to run or oversee the operations which the robots are carrying out. Now, and that's the reason why an autonomous first approach works very very well, because there you have that liberty of not relying on human intervention too much. But at the same time, when it comes to uh, broadly, when you're talking about humans which are involved in the tech debug or repair and maintenance, I think that is also constituted based on the fact that per customer, so not per x number of robots. I think that changes everything. So the first and the foremost thing is it changes the unit economics of the overall solution. It changes the technology stack which has been deployed, so that you're not having like a fixed ratio of 1:5, 1:10, 1:20. I mean, it doesn't work like that. I mean, the point is that you have to see the operations, how busy the operations are, and you assign people so that one or two staff member can oversee operations if it is running 24/7. And most of the robots which we have deployed are running 24/7. So that's something which is very important.
Wow, not many companies out there can claim that. That's very exciting. Um, Great. So we talked a bit about operations. Want to kind of bring it all the way back to what seems like one of the core differentiators of autonomy, which is the indoor and outdoor aspect of your robots. When you think about building that system, what were the big things that you had to do product wise to make sure that this could be unlocked? Anything that you felt you had to, compared to the average robotics company, focus extra hard on when building the product, both in the software and hardware, to get this indoor and outdoor autonomy?
I think one of the major differentiators which we have compared to any competitors, be it in the enterprise setting or even the hyperlocal side. Our solutions are too much designed for the customer. Like it's so I'll give you an example. So our compartments are modular compartments, so you can have 8 lockers on it, you can have one large locker on it. It is focused on solving the customer problem, like you know so and same, like since our customer type is such, which is enterprise healthcare, so that's why it is designed like that. At the same time, the other aspect is understanding different type of context, which again goes back to the same thing, that because you understand context, the robots can do seamless indoor outdoor transitions and movement, and even in different inclement weather conditions as well. So we are having our robots running in London with DPD, and doing last mile hub to customer deliveries, and they are running in heavy rains. I mean, London is always raining, and the robots are working absolutely fine. I think that is what the major differentiator is. Now, on the contrary, we have our competitors, which can be Serve or Diligent or Starship or Athon. So most of these, again, I'll say that they have built a wonderful solution. They have limited their ODD in such a way that they are solving the current problem in some shape and form. But given the pace at which we are moving, I think the ODDs and expectation of the customers are increasingly, changing. So if people were okay that delivery robots coming at a doorstep and delivering something for you, hey, I mean, now people are expecting that it should deliver in a mailbox, and where I don't even have to come outside to pick up my delivery. I'll pick up whenever I want, or deliver it in a locker, or maybe come inside a building, take the elevator and deliver to my doorstep, if it's an apartment building. So I think the it's very important to build technology which is future ready, not solve the problem intermittently, because those are the companies which will have a very hard time when the customer expectation is different, and what they have scaled up already is different, right? Because it comes down to another question, which is around scaling. That's what the whole discussion we are having about, that you have to build a technology which can scale with the customer requirements. It's not just a scaling one type of robots to just increase the number of robots. It has to scale over the period of time, because um, you know industry changes slightly differently compared to when robots are in public environments. So the expectation changes very rapidly. So I think that's the crux of what we have seen.
Awesome. I love that, being future ready. Is it safe to assume that maybe one day autonomy will have manipulation or end effectors as part of the solution?
Why not? I mean, again, that goes back to the same thing. You know uh, it's a cliche, but as Steve Jobs says, right, put the customer at the center and then design a product, not the other way around, that this is what we have built, now you take it. So I think if the customers are looking for manipulation as their ultimate solution, why not? If they're looking for different type of mobility, then why not? So I think those are the things which we see is happening very rapidly. So when we were discussing earlier today about why physical AI is such a buzzword right now, because there is no single robot which is doing everything. It has to be a multimodal system which is performing, say a mission or a task. So I think that's a world we live in. So we can't say that the robots will not have manipulation, it will not have wheels, or it won't fly. I mean, it can be a mix of all three of them, as we speak.
Ritukar, this has been an awesome conversation. Thank you so much again for the insights. To wrap us up, two more questions and closing. What advice would you give to founders or engineers who are about to scale their first fleet of robots?
I think, again, love the problem more. Not just the overfitting a solution. So once your operations or the customer operations are proven with a single, or maybe a small fleet, then it's an easier way to scale, but be future ready so that you know the problems which are coming in. So I think, while we all are talking about physical AI is equals to robots, that's not true. Physical AI is robots plus an AI layer which is running different type of robots. I think that is what the most important thing to understand. So orchestration layers, fleet management systems, I think the intercompatibility of different robots is something which they have to keep in mind while they're scaling up.
Awesome. And how can the audience help you? Do you have any shout outs or calls to action for them?
Yeah, so if you want to reach out to us, so our website is autonomy.io, ottonomy.io. And if you want to know more about our orchestration framework, then reach out to autumn.ai, which is ottumn.ai. I'm Ritukar Vijay. I'm always available on LinkedIn, so ping me if you have something.
Awesome. Thanks again, Ritikar, and take care, everyone. Bye.
Thanks, Vedant. Take care.